Ladies and gentlemen, hey, hi, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. Pretty much ever since Warzone released, there's been one common goal for every single player out there, regardless of whether you've been playing Call of Duty for a decade or even just for like 2 days. And that goal is to improve. And of course, in the time since Warzone released, we've seen the weapon meta and the movement meta and other various in-game strats evolve. And as the game continues to get updated and as it continues to evolve, so do those metas. So today we're breaking down a handful of mistakes a lot of players make and basically just how to avoid them or fix them altogether. So if you enjoy the video at any point, or if you just find it helpful, let me know by dropping a like on it. And of course, if you're new here, we are always covering the latest Call of Duty news, intel, updates, tips, leaks, everything like that. So feel free to subscribe with your notifications turned on to stay up to date with everything there. Also, these Season 4 Twitch drops are still live, and I'll be streaming a ton over the next few days with drops enabled. So if you do want to come and earn some free items in-game, twitch.tv/WhosImmortal is the place to be, and that link will be down below. Now, getting into the tips for today, like I said, this is all about pointing out mistakes that a lot of players make, and then breaking down how to avoid those situations. So, first and foremost, let's talk about the brand new gulag. Now, personally, I'm just gonna say it, I'm not really a huge fan of the current gulag situation. You know, the snipers and the fists just are not for me. I would much prefer the rifles and the SMGs, and actually, I think I prefer the pistols over that, just because I think that comes down to skill the most. However, in the current gulag, obviously the snipers make for some pretty awkward fights. You know, they're meant for long-range engagements, and here we are in the showers, and the two just don't really add up, which ultimately leads to a lot of punching. However, the way most people go about it is they're just going to switch to their fists and basically just start swinging, which would actually take 4 hits to take out the other player. Whereas, if you were to simply melee with your primary weapon instead, whether that be the AX-50 or the Dragunov or whatever other primary you may have, that's actually going to be a 2-hit kill. And obviously, that's going to be the much better option when it comes down to it. So next time you're taking a trip to the gulag, make sure that if you are going to melee, it's going to be with a weapon and not your hands. Now, another mistake that a lot of players make is choosing the wrong contract after coming back from the gulag, or honestly, not even knowing which one to necessarily choose in certain situations. Basically, the way I see it, bounties are completely out of the question when you're coming out of the gulag. Obviously, you don't have any weapons, that is going to be a massive uphill battle, not worth it whatsoever. Recons also aren't super great either since they give off your position, and they also don't offer a ton of money. Most Wanted, I guess, is always an option, but it's a ballsy one to go for right after returning from the gulag if your teammates didn't win theirs. So this essentially leaves Scavengers and also the supply runs. Now, both of these are great ways to get back into the game, either financially or through bringing your teammates back, or both if you play it right. Which is why I would say scavs are pretty much always the way to go, because not only do you get the cash for completing the actual contract, but oftentimes, cash is also going to drop from the crates you need to open for the contract itself. So by the time you complete one, you could easily have enough cash to potentially buy back multiple teammates at that point, whereas the supply run is only going to give you 1 free buyback. So I would go for that maybe if you just needed to get 1 squad mate back into the game. Then I'd probably go for a scavenger altogether. So if and when the situation arises, always aim for those scavenger contracts first, with the supply runs being a solid backup option, I guess you could say. Then, getting into the next tip, another mistake that players are making actually stems from the new Stimulus Trios mode, and here what you should not be doing is waiting to grab a loadout from cash you find in-game, because you actually each spawn with 4,500 cash by default. So this means literally as soon as the game starts, you can afford a loadout by pooling your money together, which in my opinion is exactly what you should do. Sure, if you die right away, then obviously you're not going to be able to afford your respawn. However, a death that early on into the game is not going to be nearly as impactful as one later on into the match, after you've gotten some kills and some loot, and probably enough cash to get that respawn back. So, in Stimulus Trios, drop at a buy station right away, give one player all your cash, and grab your loadout. That way you can have your class set up and ready within 30 seconds of the game starting. Now, next up, we've got to talk about the monolithic suppressor, and actually when to not use it. I know this is weird coming from the #1 monolithic suppressor stand channel on YouTube, but just hear me out. Yes, the monolithic suppressor is the best muzzle option in the game, except for when it's not. However, that only happens in very rare cases. Like for instance, on the Odin you would want to be using the Colossus suppressor instead. On the MP5 you'd actually want to use the monolithic integral suppressor, and on the Fennec you'd want to go for the deadfall barrel. So while the monolithic suppressor is the best option normally, there are a few cases where you'd want to be using something else instead. Also, when it comes to attachment setups, another mistake players are making more recently is using the no stock option like they did prior to the 1.23 update. As we know, the no stock option got a pretty hefty nerf with the 1.23 patch, so now in those medium and long range fights, no stock is going to seriously throw off your aim. So now when making a class, I would really only recommend using no stock when you plan on using a weapon almost exclusively in CQC fights. Because at that point, you know when an enemy is only like 10 meters away from you, the recoil and the sway is not going to feel nearly as rough. Whereas when you are trying to take out an enemy on a heady like 50 or 60 or 70 meters out, they are going to be a whole lot harder to track when you have no stock equipped. So definitely make that switch up where needed. Then another quick thing that a lot of people overlook is simply looting weapons faster by double tapping the swap button. So on Xbox that would be Y, on PlayStation that'd be triangle, and on PC either your scroll wheel or 1 and 2 by default. And when you time this correctly, you can pick up a weapon, double tap triangle for instance, and that'll basically bypass the animation of picking up the weapon fully, then going through whatever animation that weapon may have. Now, it may not seem like a huge game changer in the long run, and honestly, it's not, but it could buy you a spare second that could save your life early on into a game. Now, let's also talk about engagements as a whole, because there are a few mistakes that I see players making here too. So, first off here, knowing how to push a squad is going to be key, and so many times I see players all flood at once from the same spot or from the same position, which, yeah, in some cases can definitely work, but you can also gain a massive upper hand in an engagement by essentially pushing multiple angles at the same time. So you'd have one person push left, another right, another head-on, and that dynamic of taking on a squad from multiple angles is usually going to catch them off guard and sort of pin them down, which makes eliminating them a whole lot easier. Then another thing to note when it comes to engagements is to not force fights that are out of the zone when the zone is either moving or getting ready to move. You know, fighting out of the zone is always going to be an inconvenience because then you're fighting the gas and also an enemy team. But instead, if you were to gain the location of an enemy team, get to where you assume they're going to rotate to in the zone, and then pick them off as they're coming in, that is a much easier engagement overall. So don't force out of zone engagements, and instead play the power position and gain the upper hand. Now, I've also got a few very specific things I want to bring up, and these are mainly just lack of knowledge mistakes, meaning you may not know that these things can happen. So, say you have an airstrike or a cluster and you know a team is on a rooftop or in some position above you. If possible, it's actually best to use that airstrike on the grounds beneath them or in the building under them, because then it's not going to alert them of the streak coming in. However, if you were to plant it right on top of them, then of course they're going to end up getting the airstrike incoming message, so just keep that in mind. Now, it's also important to know that if you see an enemy king on the map or a most wanted contract in action, you can actually ping the king on the map, then that player is going to be highlighted physically in-game, which of course makes it way easier to figure out exactly where they're at. So that is another very niche tip in a sense, and so is the last one that we've got for today, and to be honest, this is a mistake that I make all the time. This trick always gets me, and I hate the fact that it does. But basically, you've probably seen that we have various sprays in game that are just an operator. It's simple as that. And if you are to spray one of these on the wall, it can essentially look like an enemy is staring right at you. And if you spray this in the right place, like at the top of some stairs or by a corner, you can easily catch players off guard and cause them to shoot at the spray instead of you. So if you want to try and embarrass some players, definitely give this one a go. And also, I guess, try your best not to fall for it yourself. Anyways, with all of that being said, those are some more mistakes you need to avoid here in Warzone and how to counter them or fix them in general. And that is going to wrap things up for today. If you guys enjoyed the video, or if you just found it helpful, let me know by dropping a like on it. And of course, if you're new here and you want to stay up to date with the latest Call of Duty news, intel, updates, leaks, and pretty much everything in between, feel free to subscribe with your notifications turned on. That way you'll always know whenever I upload a new video. As always, if you want to check out any of my partners, be sure to use code IMMORTAL on all Scuff, G Fuel, Control Freak, and Respawn products. Until Tuesday, actually, my G Fuel code is 30% off, so there's that. And as I mentioned earlier, those Twitch drops are still active, so if you want to check me out and earn some free items for watching my stream, that link is down below. But once again, thanks so much for tuning in, and until next time, take it easy, have an awesome rest of your day, and I'll catch you guys later. Peace out.